which came up earlier in an opportune moment. Twitter acts like all three kinds of networks. Every message that goes out on Twitter has to go through the Twitter server. What kind of network is that? Centralized. But you follow people, and they follow people, and follow back, and follow this way and that way. And what kind of network, kind of social graph is that? Decentralized. But when, say, we're talking on a hashtag, or something that can span informationally all over the network, that becomes a distributed network. So Twitter is simultaneously all three. And it's important to use these kinds of examples to keep in mind that networks behave different ways depending on how we're using and the technical constraints we're dealing with. Twitter, Facebook, social networks in general that are centralized, they can censor any content they want to censor, period. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You can't sneak anything by them. They've got the server. But they can't dictate necessarily how people are communicating on it. So it creates interesting tensions, which we live with a great deal these days. So I'm going to completely screw up the video recording for a few minutes and try another exercise. We're gonna have to do the quick version of this because I'm taking far too long. All right. So, sorry for the but we're going to do an exercise on how packet switching networks work. I'm going to need more volunteers here very soon. Now, how many of you passed notes in class in 8th grade? Because it wasn't just me. All right. So, I'm going to need a pen. We're going to do that again. And I need my first volunteer to send a note and my first volunteer to receive one. All right, you're sending notes. I'm sorry, your name is? Shazad. I'm going to misspell. Everyone, I'm going to misspell and mispronounce your names. I'm sorry. Thank you. Also, my writing is horrible. All right, Shazad, you are sending a mail to? Trish. I'm going to spell that wrong just on purpose. T-R-E-R. Okay, this is your note, and you're going to pass it to her. But here's the rules. I am the teacher, and if I catch it, you guys are in big trouble. You're getting Saturday detention. You understand that, young man?
Yes.
All right, so you have to sneak it by me so I don't notice. Look. What was that? What was that? What are you people up to? All right, keep going. But you have to look to see where the note is going because he can't actually say that without us getting caught. So you need to look and see where it goes. All right, keep passing the note. You have to look to see where it's going. That's the rules of not getting caught by your 8th grade teacher. All right, Trish, have you got the note?
Nay, semester.
No, you need to go right there. All right. You may or may not, as you would desire, Trish, share that note with the class. Did you bring enough for everyone? Anyway. Now, that was fun. Everybody who saw the note, everyone who saw the note, raise your hand. I have my doubts, but sure. Sometimes, by the way, that is how routing does work on the internet. It could go really, really wrong. Anyway, so if that's a super secret message, what's the problem?
Anyone can look at it?
Yeah. So if you're anything like me in the 8th grade, you invented a binary code to pass notes in. You're probably statistically not. So now we're going to take...
I'm willing to share the note.
So I'm going to go ahead to speed this up. I'm going to read you the next note that we were going to do this with.
I'm willing to share the note.
Oh.
I think it says the teacher is a flying rat.
That's a nyan cat, and my feelings are hurt. fine with being called a nyan cat.
I feel like you're making some artistic commentary here. So I'm going to just show you what this one says. I'll just read it to you because we were going to pass it around. And it says, your new password to everything on our internal network is TACNAN. So if this were an email, what's the problem? How many of you in the course of your lives or careers have seen or received an email like this? You may also respond by doing this. This is a packet switching network. It is not a secure network. All right, I need 3 volunteers for this next exercise. Because we're going to start to explain the wonderful world of encryption. And all right, one of the volunteers I need is someone to be Google. Have you always wanted to be Google? You have always wanted to be Google. You can stay right there. You can stay right where you are. Just raise your hand and announce that you're Google.
Google.
Excellent. And I need another to and from. All right, and your name?
Mabel.
Mabel. Now I'm going to misspell it. And Mabel, you are sending a message to? Sure. Yeah, your name? Christopher. Now, you guys can have some more fun with this by being a really bad network. We are clear I'm misspelling everything. All right. So, first thing we're going to do is you're going to get an envelope that you use to send things out. And the new rule here is you're using a type of encryption, I'm going to write on here, called HTTPS. Actually, it's called SSL, which is spelled TLS, which you can tell from the HTTPS. Mm-hmm. This is normally when I say computer scientists should not be allowed to name anything, up to and including their own children. So yes, and by the way you tell that you have it normally is you see the HTTPS and a little lock on your browser. So what that means is it's inside of a layer of encryption that goes to the server. So here's your message, and it's from Mabel. I didn't even write that well this time. So your job, you can't open, so you, the room, the network, cannot open the envelope, but you can pass it along. And you know that it needs to go to Google because it's on there. Go ahead and start passing. Remember, I'm still an 8th grade teacher. I can't catch you passing it. You have to pass it from node to node, so I can't see it. That was incredibly efficient routing. I just want you to know that the internet is almost never that good. Okay, Google. Now you can open the envelope because it's addressed to you. And inside the envelope, you will find a message. And you will tear off one copy of it and keep it. When somebody visits their Gmail account and looks at their sent folder, they're looking at that copy. Now you're going to take that and put that in the other envelope that's from you and start passing that around.
Okay.
Go ahead and pass it around. Got my eye on you, Google. All right. Again, much more efficient routing than, apparently it's just from one Google employee to another. Just is what that was. Now, if it had gone around the whole room, let's say, pretend, you would not have been able to read it because you would have just had the envelope. But you would have been able to see the to and the from. What is that called?
Metadata.
Metadata. That's the thing we've been having all these arguments about. And there's a bunch more metadata than that, but that's a good start. So I'm going to go ahead. I actually have this hat today, so it's perfect. Google, I'm going to be the NSA. I'll be like, hey, how you doing, Google? Hi. It's good to see you. Let's have golf next week. Where's that message? Your copy of it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you have a good day.
You don't keep them.
Well, I could keep a copy if I wanted to. but I didn't want to write that many notes out before we did this. All right, we call that server-side encryption. And I don't know if I should use the mic again, not just yet. And then server-side encryption is a really good idea. In fact, if I were to mention a tool, I would mention HTTPS Everywhere from the EFF, which tries to get you to turn this on. Because you know what is worse than Google having your data? Everyone who it passed along with the network having your data too. So we really want that little lock there, even if it makes it hard to get on airport networks, which it does. But using HTTPS everywhere we can does a huge amount to save us from many, many bad actors on the internet, or even just accidental crap that can happen. It's a good idea. It doesn't stop anyone who has access to Google from accessing all your data. But there's another kind of encryption, so we call that server-based encryption. There's another kind of encryption, which is end-to-end encryption. And as is implied by that name, it allows you to encrypt things from one end to another. Now I have to find my envelopes again. So, 2 more quick volunteers. All right, and you are? Ashley? I'm going to spell that right. Just to prove I can. And you are sending a message to? Your name? Amanda. All right, I have the message here. Ashley's going to use encryption inside of her Gmail or whatever her email client is, which we'll say Gmail because if it's going to Google, one side of the conversation is on Gmail. If it's on the internet, basically one side of the conversation is on Gmail. I am sad to say. But before that, she's going to encrypt it first. And that's what this envelope is. And I'm going to put this message into this envelope for you. And seal it. So it's from Ashley to Amanda. Remember, I'm not putting it into the Google thing yet. This is just, and only Amanda can decrypt this. There's a bunch of technical ways to make this happen, but we're not going to go into those right now. We're going to get our Google envelopes. And this goes from Ashley to Google. Take it inside of our HTTPS envelope. And remember that you have to get this to Google before it goes to anyone else. And Google, when you get your envelope, you are going to open your envelope and pull out the message and save your copy. Oh no! All you can do now is you can save a copy of what's called the ciphertext, but for informational purposes, it's the same as having nothing. All you can do now is wrap it up in the other envelope and send it on. Even if you could get past Google's HTTPS at this point, you'd still just have ciphertext inside. I got my NSA hat on. Hey Google! Make some subversives and send an email through you again. Copy of that message. We must backdoor all the iPhones. Roughly what they're doing right now. Yes. At this point, neither Google nor the government ends up with any significant information. The downside is that if you lose your information, Google can't give it back to you. If you lose the key that let you encrypt it, it's gone. It's finished. Which is one of the reasons why Apple was loath to do something like end-to-end encryption until things like the JLAW pictures happened, at which point they were like, we're sick of this sort of thing, and we would rather just put you on end-to-end and not have it be our problem. That was no fun for them. Because essentially, if we do like the play acting, which I'm not going to do because we're low on time, for that one, it looked like you sent all your data to Apple, and then I came up and went, I'm her, give me all the data. And you were like, prove it. I'm like, My mother's maiden name is Blah, and they were like, oh, okay. Woohoo, 4chan! So, honestly, vendors are getting really sick of that happening. And it's one of the reasons why there's a move to end-to-end, is because they don't like that when their stuff gets compromised, they get blamed for things that aren't necessarily fully their fault. And law enforcement, here's the thing, is when law enforcement or governments, whether they're ours or foreign governments, are like, but we want a special backdoor no one else has. I'm gonna go ahead and go back on the mic. When we want a special door that no one else has, they're asking for the mathematically impossible. They're saying, hey, can we just make pi 3, because that would make our lives simpler. And I don't care if you're the US government, math says no. Yes?
But don't programs like Stuxnet and other things like show that there are backdoors out there that the government knows about that most people aren't aware of, or most other governments aren't aware of?
Stuxnet also makes it obvious that you can't keep a backdoor secret.
True.
So the problem isn't that there aren't backdoors, it's that backdoors make everyone more insecure all of the time. And the important point I like to make about Stuxnet and what our government did there, this is slightly off topic, but I'm going to make it anyway, is when they were just sitting down and designing Stuxnet, did they call all the nuclear facilities in America and amongst our allies and double check that they were not vulnerable to that bug first? Did they make sure that they were patched? Or did they leave our infrastructure backdoored in order to be able to act on other people's infrastructure? And that's chilling. It is extremely chilling to me when there are zero-day bugs out there that the government is hoarding, which may be used to hurt that government's citizenry or that government's Office of Personnel and Management. Yeah?
But didn't it only go after computers and stuff that used Farsi? So I mean, I could see hurting our allies,
But no, Stuxnet was found all over the place.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't doing anything.
So here's the thing is, like, they used zero-day bugs,
Yeah.
right? Those bugs existed. They could have been used by anyone.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So when our government leaves us insecure, they don't just leave us insecure to them. They leave us insecure to anyone who may have this knowledge. It is a supremely arrogant position to believe you are the only one that will find the problem, find the solution to a math problem. And any mathematicians out there, you know what I'm talking about. So, we are running dangerously low on time. I'm going to go over slightly if that's okay with you guys. So I'm going to talk about 3 basic ideas about how we do things on the internet. We just talked about encryption, but I'm going to get a little bit into what encryption actually is. This is my first slide to introducing encryption. Encryption is just a way of scrambling language. So there's really easy encryption, like this, although you still find people, especially non-native English speakers. I'm a bad person. Encryption is kind of reinvented many, many times for the people who need it as different ways of doing coded language. So this is hobo signs. The signs hobos would use to communicate to each other about territories they were in. It was a way of leaving an encoded message in a geographical place. Nowadays, we essentially do replacement of numbers and letters with other numbers and letters. This is a very, very simplistic code that human beings can do up top. On bottom is what happens when we let the computers do tons of difficult math for us, that computers then have a really hard time undoing. And so what Google gets in the example that we were just doing is this block of what's called ciphertext. And it really, when it's done right, is indistinguishable from noise. It's just a series of random things. So we talked about server-side security, which is when my connection to Google or Yahoo or whatever, news sites, so on and so forth, is encrypted, although what happens at that endpoint, and that's when we're talking about like the data in motion is encrypted, although the thing at rest there may or may not be. This is the kind of encryption that lets you do online transactions and talking without the school's network seeing everything you do. It's also how bad actors get a lot of information because it doesn't tell you anything about what's happening to that data at the other side. But we want to reclaim not just privacy, but veracity on this crazy ass network that we've built, where everybody can see all the packets. And I do want to make this point. When I encrypt something, it isn't just that you can't read the message, it's also that you can't change it, which is a really important point. There's a bunch of people who are going to change a message, and then it does something, it looks like it's going to be a picture of a puppy. It's in fact a picture of a puppy plus a piece of malware that sends all of your information to the Estonian mafia. Still looks like a puppy. Bonus puppy. But when we've got an encrypted connection, you can't insert something because you don't know where anything is to insert it. So it isn't just privacy. Encryption also gives us veracity in our data. Again, with HTTPS, that means that the injection, if there's going to be injection, has to be at the point where the server is. If it's end-to-end, that injection is very hard to do. Very, very hard indeed. Matter of fact, it's much easier just to own your computer. It lets us reclaim this. It is really awesome once we use encryption all over the network. We get to reclaim the network and make it serve us instead of betray us. And this is a great network. Okay, authentication, quick quiz. What does authentication have to do with encryption? We kind of mix them up in our heads. Absolutely nothing. Authentication is how I tell you who I am. It is nothing to do with you remember how we were passing, or we were going to pass that note that had the password in it? That's an authentication token, but it has nothing to do with encryption. So we want to build encryption on top of our authentication systems so that everybody else isn't just sneaking out what we're trying to say and do. We in computer science have told you terrible things about passwords for a very long time. In fact, almost all of your websites are still telling you the wrong things about passwords. And passwords are one of those things that's getting stored at the other end in some form or another, although hopefully not as a password. That's a completely separate talk. Something about that password is getting stored at the other end, and one of the reasons why we will constantly run around telling people not to reuse your password isn't because of how you're managing it. It's because of how weird-ass website you just registered in is managing it. If they're not saving your password in a secure way, and they're letting it leak out onto the internet, then if you use that same password for random hobo website number 5 that you used for Gmail, which links to all your other stuff, then I find this, I try it over here, I got your life. Do not reuse passwords. I think I heard an oops out there. Oh, why did you do that? Okay, there you are. Again, other things we've been telling you that are horribly, horribly wrong about passwords is we've been telling you to use a number and a letter and something else that you can't remember. And XKCD, which is a fount of very useful information in so many ways, did this thing that I just rip off. Because the danger isn't of your roommate guessing your password, for the most part. The danger is that I'm going to use a machine more powerful than that to make thousands and thousands of guesses per second. And instead of trying to figure out characteristics about you, I'm just going to try all the numbers and all the letters. Why not try all the passwords? In order to make that very hard on me, you make a long password. It turns out the human mind is extremely good at remembering sentences and extremely bad at remembering the passwords our banks make us set. So if you go for an over 14 character password, which is usually a relatively short sentence, don't make it a quote that you will find in an online dictionary. Or if you do, misspell things in a way that you will consistently misspell them. I'm very consistent about misspelling.
We know.
And this gives you the math. Let me go ahead and say a short password is fast, and a long password is not just hard, but it can get time that the planet will be in this particular solar system hard. And that's what we want. Make it hard, make it unique. Now, if this is already sounding impossible, it's actually, as someone who's been using passphrases for many years, much easier to do these passphrases. I will warn you that they're much harder to type when you're drunk. although that's good if it's a root password. Anyway, if you want to save all these passwords, there are a bunch of programs that let you save passwords, things like Keychain Access on Mac and KeyPass on Windows or Linux. They will let you save these passwords, they will populate them. You can use passphrases or long random characters that you paste in, if that's your thing. But passphrases will get you most of what you need, and you can just start making phrases that are memorable to you, things that you care about, things that you said to a friend once. Say your opinion of tacos or Bob. You know, all these kinds of passwords are useful in that they're long, you're always going to know what they are. They're useless in that most of the websites you go to aren't going to let you use good passwords. And if you want to make my day, complain to them. If we all start complaining to them about how bad their password algorithms are, they'll start to fix it. Also, everywhere where you have the chance, you want to turn on something called two-factor authentication. There are 3 factors of authentication. Remember, this is how I confirm that I'm me to you who are you. The first one is a thing I know, and that's a password. The second one, and this is the two-factor that you're starting to run into, is a thing I have. And that can be a key that I carry with me, or a cell phone. And the way that looks is that there's some data that's on that thing, which unless that thing is present, I can't get into my bank account. And that's really useful, because if somebody's got my password for one reason or another, and there are many ways that can happen, but they don't have my cell phone, they can't have my stuff. And I want them to not have my stuff. Two-factor is now available on many, many, many services, but it hasn't been taken up anywhere near as much as it should be. So if you start to say, I want to see if I can opt into two-factor authentication on my Google account, on Facebook, you can do it on Twitter, but it's hobbled and stupid, but that's another rant. So on all these places, it means that even if you're using password as a password, which you would be amazed how many people still do that. Mine is special, password 12345. Even if you're doing that, they can't necessarily get into all your stuff because they don't have your cell phone or your key or whatever. The third factor is biometrics, something you are. And we don't use that for a lot of reasons because that's dumb for the most part. People use it now are using like cell phones and face prints and so on and so forth, thumbprints and faces on cell phones, and it's a disaster and we should just not do that. But again, that's a long conversation. The third thing I really want to talk about is malware, and I really want to take a little extra time on this because it's really, really special. The thing about malware is it's the scariest in some ways of all the things that I'm talking about. It's when another piece of software takes over your computer. But it's important that you need to understand what your computer really is. The way I like to put this is that you, in the modern world, are the master of 1,000 or 10,000 genies. And they are amazing, they have basically magical powers, and they are going to do everything you say the instant you say it. And I have a 3 to 4 sentence history of computer science for you that is key to understanding this. One time, a man named Alan Turing found a magic lamp and he rubbed it, and out popped a genie. And he wished for infinite wishes. And then we killed him for being gay, but we kept the wishes. So inside your computer is what's called a Turing machine, and it can do anything that any other Turing machine can do. And inside that Turing machine, including in the things Turing machines can do, is make another Turing machine. You've got another one. And then maybe you've got something in your browser that's also a Turing machine. In your pocket right now where your cell phone is, that is more computer power than sent us to the moon. Easily. You are using it for Candy Crush. So that thing, and Candy Crush has got another interpreter in it. It's got another infinite set of wishes in it. And it's amazing what we have. But these genie, while being very smart at math, are very stupid at things that humans are very good at. And one of those is understanding where the command came from. So the two ways that somebody can steal your power over your genies, your godlike power over your genies, is one, they can imitate you. And we call this a bug. Basically, this is when there is some flaw in the system that allows a piece of software to pretend that it's you and issue commands as if it were you. And the way we fight this in computer science is by finding these and updating them. And this is why we send you updates all the time. We're like, haha, sorry. We just found a place where somebody could take over all of your genies. Could you just hit this button and let us close that? And that's why we are always saying, update your shit. Now, if you think that's a lot of updates, and I've been insecure the whole time before that, and maybe that's not okay, that's true. And that's something we should talk about as a society. How much craptacular software are we going to put our data through before we finally go, hey, maybe I don't want to drive the 1970 Pinto of cell phones. I would like something that's a little bit more high quality than that. Thank you very much. And by the way, you don't get better software by paying more money. It's all Pintos all the way down. The other way is that it can convince you to issue that command, right? It can send you something that you think is something else. And remember, this genie is stupid, automatic, and powerful. So as soon as you say, send all of my data to Estonian gangsters, I'm really mean to Estonia in these talks. It's going to do it. It's not going to question you. There's not going to be a pop-up that's like, are you sure? Estonia? You've never even been to Estonia. Instead of doing that, it's going to be like, yes, master. Everything to Estonia. And sometimes that was an email attachment that looked like a puppy, but also had a program in it that was written by Estonian gangsters or people who really like them. So this is a phishing attack that I found in my email. Log into your Chase account. And when I was first designing this talk, I didn't actually have a phishing email, so I refreshed for a few minutes. Literally true. I'm like, I'm up on 15 minutes. Got it. Now, it's hard to see from where you're sitting, but here it says bigpicture.com/templates. Just as a hint, chase.com does not own bigpicture.com. So as soon as you put your username and password in there, boom, they got your Chase account. Yes, there are often many tells in phishing mails, but there's another form called spear phishing, which, again, if you're something like a journalist or an activist, you're more likely to see these. They're very much directed at you. They will often have knowledge about you. They will look like something that you should trust. Let me put it this way. If it's in your email client, don't trust it. Think about this very hard. It's a big problem, and it's a problem we need to solve. Incidentally, it was a problem with this talk, because they wanted to do things with email attachments